That's all. That's great. It's good to get an idea of what you're all doing, and we will certainly try to address as many questions as you ask. I mean, we really want as many questions thrown at us. We will both challenge a lot of thinking today with our talks, and hopefully maybe create some direction in possible change in management, and from a lot of the statements you've made here, it looks as though some of you are looking at modifying things and changing. I come from a fair way from here. It took about 2 days to get over towards Adelaide, and got a property. It's 300 k's east of Sydney. Northwest of Sydney. It's Dubbo, near Dubbo, central New South Wales, is where I am. So totally different to here, but the principles of change, the principles of what we're doing, it applies to everywhere on the planet. It doesn't really matter what rainfall you've got, what soil type you've got. The principles of this will work anywhere. And we're mainly going to be talking about the principles of stuff. The property at home is restored native grassland, and I'm going to talk a fair bit in the first half of this talk on grasslands and how they function. Just some enterprises. Merino sheep are our main enterprise, and have for my great-grandparents settled there in the 1860s and ran merino sheep, and we're still running merino sheep. Some cattle at times, not much. Merino sheep are our main enterprise. We do grow some crops, but I worked out, I developed a different way of growing crops 30 odd years ago, so they're sown differently, which I'll talk about a little bit about, not a lot. An interesting enterprise that we do have is harvesting and selling native grass seed off the grassland at home, and that has potential for many areas. And I'll show you how that happened. We run a merino stud that my father started in the 1940s, and Kelpie dogs as well. We sell dogs all over the world, and so that's the main enterprise mix that we have. How can we restore our farms and properties? How do we manage dry seasons, which is probably very relevant at the moment? So how do we manage dry seasons or differing seasons, and how can we be more profitable? And that's really what a lot of this is about. How do we survive really in these sorts of seasons? To be more profitable, we need to really have a look at what's gone wrong, and things have gone wrong. If we look at, and this is just, well, certainly all over Australia, but in other countries as well, we're not unique to problems in agriculture. And a lot of it has been created by the way things have been managed in the past, and there is a real groundswell around the world on creating change and doing things differently and especially better. Because I have the opportunity to look at different properties, different places, not only all around Australia but in other countries around the world, we often these properties have a very similar problem, and you go onto them and you get hard compacted soils, heaps of weeds, just things aren't functioning right. Hard compacted soils, So, and often these properties that are crashing tend to have very few perennial species on them, very grass species or forb species, and no native grassland species, or very little. The grasslands have declined to such a point where things have just collapsed, and that's a very common thing we see everywhere. I'm certainly not unique to that. The property at home, because we've been on there for a long time, my father adopted in the 1950s a high input method of agriculture, which was commonly called the Green Revolution. Lots of fertiliser, a lot of pesticides, which fortunately you fellows out here don't really need anyway. So, but it had, the property there in the 90s had 60% weeds, bare soil, things that I just mentioned in that previous slide, and it was going really poorly. It was dreadful. So I know what that's like. Like, the place at home hasn't always been good. It's been a disaster also. To understand what's gone wrong, we need to know what the grasslands were like pre-European times, and we need to go back that far. And here in South Australia, it's really hard to find out what the grasslands here were like. Some areas, Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland, we've got a bit more of an idea, because when the early explorers went through and the early settlers, when they settled, recorded a lot of those grasslands and what they were like. But here, I've found it quite difficult to find a lot of information on what they were like, other than the grasslands up through all these areas were very good. That's why it was settled and why sheep were run on this country really early. So you can bet that these grasslands were good. And you could probably work that out from the early stocking rates that they had. So the point is, how do we get them back to that? Can we get them back to how they used to function? Now, one of the really interesting things in this country, and I guess most countries, the Indigenous people, but here we're talking about here in this country now, they managed their grasslands for many tens of thousands of years. And there was a really good reason why they looked after their grasslands, because the grasslands were their supermarket. I mean, that's where their food came from. So they did actually nurture the grasslands and learned to manage them really well. When Europeans came into pretty well all of Australia, we walked into a managed grassland, even though no one realised it at the time. So, but it was their food source, and no one would burn the local supermarket down, so they looked after their grassland as well. So what caused the destruction of grasslands? And this is important for especially these areas here where you were and still are very dependent on your grasslands and what grows here naturally. Because if you lose them here, very, very difficult to replace them. This environment, we can't really sow something to replace your original grassland species. We need to try to restore them naturally, and yes, we can. And I'm going to give Alejandro the job of explaining that. No, but we'll both talk about that. So, what caused the destruction of them, and some of you know this anyway, the grazing. See, early days, we know all over Australia, the grasslands were overstocked. We know that now, but the people then, those times, because basically Europeans didn't really understand Australia, let alone this country here. So they were managed poorly, generally due to lack of knowledge, really. And certainly ploughing to sow crops was really a total disaster. And probably fortunately in these areas here, and it is fortunately, not a lot of cropping's been done. And if it hasn't been done, we know we can fix it. Cropping areas can often totally stuff land, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail later. Okay, the best way to understand good pasture, or in your case here, we're talking about grasslands, not pastures. So to be able to restore a grassland, we need to know how they function. You know, what makes up the components of a grassland, and I'm not going to go into boring detail, well, hopefully not. But we do need to know how they function, the plants and when they grow. You'd probably say when it rains, I guess, but that's when they grow. But interestingly, there's over 1,000 species of native grassland plants. These are grasses, and I'm well aware here you're relying a lot on perennial forbs and shrubs and that as part of your grassland, a very important component of it. But there was over 1,000 grassland species. Majority of those, surprisingly, were warm season summer growers, including here. But all over Australia, they were dominated by warm season grasses. Most areas, now here, I'm not too sure, but there would have been well over 200 species in grassland species in these areas, the same as most other areas around the country. These iron grass grasslands, Rowena, probably didn't come up this far, did they? Do you know? Not quite, yeah, because it gets into a different type of grassland this way. But certainly a lot of South Australia were covered in these types of grasslands. We won't go into that side of things very much. But we really need to look at the diversity, and a lot of what we're talking about here is not only restoring grassland, but restoring the species diversity. If you have more diversity in there, including a lot of these flowering plants and things, it's far better quality stock feed to start with, and then you start to restore the whole lot. And I talk a lot about restoring farm ecosystems, like the farm should function as an ecosystem, should be complementary. So, and in these grasslands we have winter growing species and summer growing species. Why are we talking about grasslands? Well, we're talking about grasslands here because that's what you've got. Well, that's what we've got to try to restore. Grasslands are the best benchmark to have to model our farms on, to function as an ecosystem. Good grasslands function as an ecosystem, and they're complementary. That everything supports everything else. So it's about species diversity, not just of plants, but plants, animals, insects, and soil microbes. Probably better off with less of those hopping animals here, so I would say, but that's another story in itself, how you manage roos. If our farms function more like grasslands, we'll solve most of our soil health problems, and soil health is important in these areas as well. Soil health, weeds, disease, insect problems, all sorts of things. Reduce costs and be more profitable. This is all about being profitable. Types of plants in the grassland. There are winter growing species, and some of those are perennials or long-lived plants. Just here now, I'm just talking about grasses. I'm going to mention the forbs and shrubs and stuff later. But also annual species. But what we want on our places, on our properties, is more perennials, as many perennials as we possibly can get, because they're long-lived and they'll stick with you. We also have summer growing plants and grasses as well, and we have also forbs, which are flowering plants, and scattered trees and shrubs, which are a very important component of your grasslands here. Just what C3 and C4 doesn't mean much unless you understand. It's about how plants function, and it's about how plants capture carbon dioxide to grow. We know that plants require carbon dioxide, sunlight, and water, and we know how valuable the water component is. What that does, some plants have the ability to tolerate high temperatures and low rainfall, and it's all related to how they take in carbon dioxide. Now, I'm not going to go into much more detail other than what does that mean in a practical sense. C4 plants, when we talk about C4, can be perennial or annual. Most of the ones you'd have, you would have some annual ones here, but other dominant grassland species here are mostly summer growers. They grow and they tolerate really high temperatures. They don't worry too much about if it's 35 or 40 degrees. So, providing there's a bit of moisture. So, and very high water use efficiency. In other words, they're very good at surviving on a little amount of rain. So, they generally produce a lot of biomass or a lot of bulk feed with these types of plants. And there's not actually many of them on the planet. Only 1% of the plants on the planet are these guys. But they like hot, dry conditions. which is exactly what we've got here. So ideally, if we can encourage more of these fellas, we'll handle a lot of these dry conditions as well. Just something that probably a bit of useless information. These plants, they're the dominant species in Australia. Our grasslands apparently are at least 30 million years old. These species grasses in Australia are 30 million years old. Now, if Australia's dominated, it was dominated by these ones that'll tolerate a lot of heat and low rainfall, it's been bloody hot and dry here for a long time, maybe millions of years. Otherwise, we'd have had cool season plants like Europe's got. But no, our country's dominated by these ones. So it's been hot and dry for that long, so we've got to get used to it. It's not going to change overnight. So, just some species. Now these ones, yours here would be different to what I've got on here, some of these species. Yep. But these are generally, and remember we've got hundreds of these species, so whatever grows here are the ones that you need. Don't worry about trying to change them. So, but what just to give you a bit of an idea, as far as, and don't recommend this here, but sowing grasses, these digit grass, green panic and rose grass are actually come out of the African grassland. And some people are sowing them in the higher rainfall areas to replace, well not replace, because they have lost their native species. And things like millet and sorghum, the reason I've got them up there is that they're C4 annual crop types plants. Corn fits into that, sugarcane fits into that, which obviously wouldn't grow here. So just to give you an idea of where all this fits together. Where are we up to? Right. The other side of this, C3s, are cool season plants that you do have them here in your winter period, and so they can be perennial or annual. They mostly grow in the cooler months of the year. They do require a little bit more water than those summer growing C4s. They're more tolerant of cold. So, but they don't tolerate heat. They'll just shut down as soon as you get days over 30 degrees. They go to sleep for the summer. They don't. The perennials don't die. They just go into a summer dormancy. They produce high quality feed. Most of the plants on the planet are these C3s. That's Northern Hemisphere plants that are dominated by them. Okay, and some of these, the main ones you'd have here, you'd have a bit of wallaby grass, plains grass, and the stipers. The stipers would be the main ones here, those cool season ones. The pasture species that are sown in the higher rainfall areas are these, like Phalaris, ryegrass, cocksfoot, all those. Don't even try to sow them here, grow them here. So they just simply won't tolerate these conditions. But things like wheat, oats and barley fit into that C3 category, as well as all of those. But they're annual plants, that wheat, oats and barley. Forbs and herbs. Forbs and herbs really are the flowering components of grasslands, like, and you just put them in a broad category. Very important and valuable part of grasslands. And the early settlers and explorers spoke often about the huge amounts of flowering plants in the grasslands, pretty well everywhere. And things like glycines and orchids and lilies and daisies and all of these were in our grasslands, and hopefully there's still some in areas now. They seem to have got lost quite quickly, probably because they tasted pretty good and the sheep nailed them, I'd think. Now, what fits into the forbs and herbs too are things like I'm not suggesting you grow them here at all. Clover, lucerne, chicory, plantain are actually forbs. And in the higher rainfall areas where they're re-sowing pastures, I recommend people to put those in to fill. I wonder if this pointer works. No, I better not play with it. It'll probably never work again. So anyway, but to create almost an artificial grassland. It functions like a grassland. But here you need to restore what you've got. Okay. Now, this graph really does illustrate how grasslands function, and it is the same here. The pink line on there are warm season grasses. That's years, and that's just biomass up that side, how much bulk they produce. And you'll see from there, as it gets colder and start to get frost, these warm season grasses shut down, go into winter dormancy. They just go to sleep for the winter. But when that's happening, when they're going into dormancy, that's when the cool season ones actually start to grow. So we've got this wonderful overlap in a good grassland. As one's going to sleep for the winter, the other one's starting to grow. And reverse happens on this other end. In the spring, as the first hot days start to you start to get in October, or probably earlier than that here, those winter ones go dormant for the summer, and these warm season ones really start to take off. So if you look at that, you can see, well, it is possible to have feed all year round, providing you have rainfall, enough rainfall to make this happen. And rain, as you know, is probably the limiting factor in this environment. So now, that's what happens. Now, not so much here, but in the southern part of this state and into Victoria in particular, they've lost all of their warm season grasses. And that's what they get. And every year in these environments, everyone starts feeding stock in about here. And there's a summer drought every year. And not because it doesn't rain, because they've lost their warm season grasses. And I know in Victoria and parts of this state, people complain about summer droughts every year. It's not because of lack of rain as much as lack of plants that will grow at that time. And there's that same slide again. We can fill those gaps in with plants, with the right type of plants. So, now, this is, someone will say, that's not right. That's the closest I could get to here in looking at rainfall. Would you say you get more or less than that? I have no idea. That's as good as I could find.
The median is 230. The average is 277.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, so
for here.
Is very close to that.
Okay. Yep. Right. So it shows here, assuming it's that Port Augusta, your rainfall here is reasonably evenly distributed, summer to winter. As you get further south, it definitely gets winter dominated. But here, it's reasonably, and it looks as though that's mainly from storms. So correct me if I'm wrong in that, but yeah.
Storms when they come.
When they, yeah, you're right.
They're north, but not here.
Yeah.
Alice Springs is getting really rough.
Yes, that's right. There is. Sometimes they get good rain. Yeah, there. Yeah. It'll happen one day. It did rain once before. There was a bloody great flood then, I think. So, can we restore the grasslands? And how? Yeah. How can we fix our farm, soil nutrient decline, all this sort of stuff? You don't need to worry so much about insect attack and all that. But how can that be done without spending excessive amounts of money? Now, you don't really, this isn't relevant to you here either, except I'm going to talk a bit about cropping later. There's a few people cropping. You're not going to like what I can tell you. So one of the advantages I think you have here is that there's been, as far as I know, no or very little fertiliser and pesticides put on this rangeland country, which is a real plus. So don't go down that way. So keep fertiliser and pesticides off it. So, but while we're talking about fertiliser, people get this thing wrong. Like, and it's promoted we need to put fertiliser and pesticides on to control our problems and make things grow better. Basically, it's a heap of bullshit. Our farms and soils need to function as ecosystems. We don't necessarily need a great heap of fertiliser and pesticides. That won't fix the problems at all. We just need to manage them differently. And manage them in the way that old Mother Nature had for millions of years, really, is where we're getting at here. So, farms and our farm soils become dysfunctional, and that can apply here in these environments. As we get less plants and also some soil structure problems, that can be a problem that we need to address in nearly all country in Australia. So the soils can certainly get dysfunctional, but that's okay. We can manage that. If we allow our soils and farm to function as ecosystems, almost all of our problems go away. You go to a more conventional type field day and all they talk about is problems. Rarely ever talk about the good things. So, and if we can get if you can restore a grassland, all this starts to fall into place. We'll get better nutrient cycling, so plants have more nutrients. We don't get insect attack or any of that sort of stuff. Less animal diseases and more profit. And you can bet no one or very few people in the past, when these grasslands were good, had any problems with animal, like sheep problems and diseases and worms and any of that sort of stuff. So, need to start by fixing our soil, but this can only be done by growing plants. Plants are the key to all of this. More plants, more plant diversity, and guess what? When we have more plants and plant diversity, we can make more profit because we can start to run animals a lot better, or even more animals on our properties if we can get more plants. And a lot of this is related to fixing the hydrology or our soil, water holding capacity of our soils. And I think Alejandro's going to talk a bit about that, I think. If I don't know anything, I'll just dive at Alejandro and get him to answer it. So how do we change and what do we change to? If we modify the way we graze our animals, we don't need to do a lot necessarily different. I mean, but we need to modify it. We need to at least tweak it around the edges. We can increase plant diversity and restore soil structure and nutrient cycling, all of that. Water infiltration, very important. Don't go letting it go down the road or in through gullies and that. Keep every bit to yourself. Be really selfish with keeping all the water on your own property. So, now, increasing soil carbon, which we can do, it is a lot slower and more difficult to increase soil carbon on these lower rainfall areas, but it can be done. And again, it's about growing plants. Soil carbon is the key to increasing water holding capacity. And when we start to do that, we can then start to manage droughts a bit easier. Not saying that we're not going to get droughts, but it becomes a bit easier. We start grow more feed leading up to a dry time and get out of that dry times quicker. Grazing management. That's why I don't run cattle. Need better fences than I've got. So the way we graze animals isn't working. The way we have grazed animals isn't working. And no one's at fault with this. Like when all of Australia was settled, it was by Europeans. They managed Australia like with the knowledge they had to manage farms in Europe. So the chance of it working was almost zero, really, when they didn't have any knowledge of how to manage Australia, and they didn't ask the locals, of course, either, who'd been managing it for 50,000 years or more. So, but the way we graze animals, and have done, kills grasslands and pasture. Yeah, continuous grazing, well, it's really quite simple if you think about it. If we use this scenario now, there's a mob of a heap of kids in here, and we put a table out the front and we fill it up full of food, but we put all sorts of things like ice cream and chocolate cake and biscuits and what else? Things that kids like, lollies and all sorts of things, but then mix some cabbage and spinach through that all that food, and then turn the kids loose on this table. We know which ones they're going to eat. They'll take all the lollies and that, but the poor old cabbage and spinach, it'll be left there at the end. If you lock the kids in the room for a week, they still wouldn't eat the bloody cabbage and spinach. So now, our grasslands have been managed the same way as those kids in that room. What our sheep have done, in this case sheep in these areas, but in Australia generally mainly sheep, but cattle do the same thing. They selectively take all the good things. They take all of those good things, and if they're left there all the time, which they were in our grazing here in Australia, they hammer those good things until they kill them. But they don't kill the cabbage and spinach. So often when we talk about grasslands, there'll be someone in the audience, because I talk about grasslands a fair bit, someone in the audience say, oh, my bloody old ewes will die on that bloody native grass stuff. It's no bloody good at all. Well, of course it's no good. It's always been cabbage and spinach 200 years ago. They didn't eat, nothing ate it then. But that's what's left. With just set stock grazing, the animals have taken out those good ones. And grandfather and great-grandfather would have been on these properties, you can just about bet they carried a lot more stock, and that's because all those ice cream plants, those really good ones in there, they were still here. So they carried more stock, they did it easier. And you're sort of unfortunately left with the legacy of that sort of grazing, and you've just got cabbage and spinach left half the time. So how do we fix that? Well, Alejandro's going to explain that. No. Change the grazing is how to fix it. Because there'll be a lot of those plants that have actually survived in amongst the shrubs and things, in amongst the rocks, they'll survive. But better than that, the seed is still in the soil, especially in grazing country, not so much cropping country, because ploughs and pesticides, they stuff everything. But grazing country, you can restore them because the seed is still in the soil. So how do we do that? Basically, we create long rest periods for these grasses to finally recover. Don't come back and graze them when their poor little buggers just about this high and the seed sat there for 100 years and decided to grow, and you come along and say, kill it. So we've got to be a bit careful in that transition period. So yes, we can, and that's the reason why the grasslands aren't here, because we've just got, well, I mean, they're poor quality grasslands now because they're just cabbage and spinach. And sometimes someone in the audience will say, oh, but I love cabbage and spinach. And well, I haven't got an answer for that one. Anyway, okay. Now this slide is, Christine Jones put this together. It's actually a stiper plant. It's a native. It's not necessarily that is a cabbage and spinach plant, really. That one. So, but it's the same species, the three of them, and just it shows what something that's been set stock, the little fella on that side, and one that's fully recovered. You've given it all the time to fully recover before it's regrazed again. The one in the middle has been that big and then grazed down to that. Now, with a grass plant, if we cut the top off that one, dry it and weigh it, and cut the roots off, dry it and weigh it, they'd weigh about the same. So biomass top and bottom is about the same in grasses. So we look at that little fella there and we start to ask questions. If we ask a question, how many of your old ewes could you run on that? Well, not bloody many, because there's not enough feed there. But even probably just as important as that, or more important, if we look at the root mass on that little fella and think, well, how much water can that one source? Well, he's only about that deep, not very much at all. How much nutrient can it get? How much, like nitrogen, phosphorus, all that stuff, how much can it source? Not much at all. So that poor little bugger, it struggles all the time. And eventually, if sheep come along there and graze that again, there's a fair chance that it'll die. Or if we've got a really bad drought like you've got now, fair chance it won't survive that dry season. Whereas this fellow will, if he's it's given half a chance. Like if we look at that, okay, we've certainly got more feed. That one can source plenty of water, because some of these native grasses, they've got roots on them 3 or 4 feet deep. And not only that, sources nutrients. One thing that it does that's really important when we start trying to fix soils as well, when that plant is grazed, grazed there, we take the top off, but a lot of the material that isn't eaten isn't wasted, and animals will trample that in and on the soil surface. Now, I'll just talk about this. The gardens. I'm going to talk about gardens. Now, I know the women in here will know about gardens. All us blokes haven't got a clue, but most women know about gardens because they look after the garden. Now, why do you put, most gardens, people put straw on gardens? Anyone know why we do that? Keep the moisture in, exactly right. Anything else that does in gardens? And yeah, you can get nutrients from it as well. Yeah. What was that? Yes, it certainly would do that. I hadn't thought of that bit. Yep, definitely. Yep. What was that? Suppresses weeds, yes. But it also, and was there anything else before I say? Yeah.
Keep the soil cooler.
Very good. That's what I was going to say. Exactly. Keeps the soil cooler. And in this environment, if you can keep the soil cool, that's a big plus. So, what happens when we're grazing, if we do it well, even though here we know that these plants are further spread out, not like the higher rainfall area where they're closer together, but you can get them closer together as well. So not only the animals eating that, but they're also trampling a lot of that, adding manure and urine to it as well. So basically it gets very much like a garden. Like all the things that you mentioned in what happens in a garden, we can recreate that. We can recreate that in our grasslands. Have a seat, if you can find one. You can have a front row one if you like. Now, where was I up to here? Oh, right. Now, also, there's another little thing with this as well. Our soil is full of microbes. Just all things like bacteria and fungi and protozoa and nematodes, all that sort of stuff, and they live around the plant roots. Now, some of them live off, like fungi, live off the sugars that come out of plants, and they're very important. They're mycorrhizal fungi. But some of them also, the decomposer fungi mostly, live off dead and decaying plant material. Now, when we graze that one off really, like you can graze it back as hard as you like. That's okay. Well, maybe not as hard as you like. Leave a bit of leaf there. These roots die off, and they die off in the soil. And you can see that one. There's less roots on it, but they're not wasted because those microbes, the decomposer fungi in particular, breaks that down, and that starts the process of healing the soil. They're putting a lot of nutrients back into the soil. Now, the only way you can do it is grow your plants big enough, graze them, and then produce food for the microbes as well as for your sheep and cattle. So that's how it works. That Christine Jones, I know Christine very well, we've done a lot of talks together, but she put that slide up and showed me that quite a few years ago, and the penny dropped with me. And I thought, that just about answers everything of what's happening and how we can fix things. We just need to make sure our plants grow bigger. The only way we can do it is, hope it rains, of course, but also give it time to get to that. Time is the critical thing, and Alejandro is going to talk about that too. To get these plants to grow big enough before you regraze them. There's a few ways of doing that too, which we'll talk about. Okay. And we're talking about holistic grazing management. It doesn't matter what we call it, really, but a method where we're creating plant recovery time. Now, what it'll do is encourage the growth of perennial grassland species, discourage the growth of annual weeds, improve soil structure and soil health, improve nutrient cycling, and also it creates time to plan for droughts. Because you know what's happening in front of the animals and behind the animals. And we start to make more profit. I don't run the sheep quite as thick, dense as that at home. That's a mob that I run. There's about 2,000 ewes in that mob, and they've got lambs on them. We're just taking them up to the yards to wean the lambs. So, they're going through a gateway over here. So they're not normally grazed quite as dense as that. We're going to. You're not the boss today, are you? I was going to ask Rowena, what are we going to do? It's fine just to get out some questions. That's fine because I'm going to move on to a little bit with cropping and stuff in a minute. If just yell them out, because we're going to go out in the paddock later if we don't get blown away. So do you want to have any questions after this or during or whatever? Doesn't matter. Yeah, but I don't mind. Just try.
In the hills, it was looking a bit rough. It didn't end up too bad, but we had Colin Seis and Alejandro, and then afternoon just did a Q&A session, so everyone could ask questions.
Yeah.
It worked quite well.
Yeah.
We'll do that chance for people to have a think, and then
Yeah.
if you want to do that.
I think it'd be.
Any burning questions right now?
Yeah. Because that gets a bit heavy, that sort of stuff, and it's sometimes a bit hard for people to understand. But if no questions, I mustn't have done too bad a job trying to explain it. Okay, no, that's fine. Growing crops for grain and stock feed. And because there's only a small handful here, we're not going to dwell on this too much. We need to realise that ploughing soil has been a major cause of degraded soil and destroyed grasslands. The disc plough has done a huge amount of damage all over the world in farming land. And modern cropping methods really haven't solved the problem. All they've done was replace the plough with a boom spray and pesticides. Haven't changed the philosophy of farming really at all. So that really needs to change. I'm going to, while I've got that there, I'm going to tell a story now, not sure, but hopefully it won't take too long, of what happened with my father in his era, because it's relevant to what's happening now I see all over Australia. My family, right back great-grandfather, grandfather and my father had run merino sheep. Now, this is in the 1940s, so getting back a bit, I know I wasn't there. So, the Depression years hit in the 1930s, and so it was difficult to make money out of sheep. So my father decided he was going to grow wheat, grow crops, and because the sheep side of it was not very profitable. And he was all gung-ho, he was only a young fella then, and he bought a brand new tractor and a plough and all the gear, and decided to grow wheat. Now, he grew wheat for 20 years straight, which now we know is a bit of a disaster. Well, it is a disaster. And eventually it crashed on him. But what really crashed, he turned around, well, he could no longer grow wheat on the property. The soil became that degraded that his yields were getting less and less and less. So he thought, I better start running sheep again. And what happened, or what he realised, after all those years of farming and growing crops, he had no sheep feed. He had backed himself right into a corner and really struggled to get out of it. Now, fortunately, we were in a higher rainfall area than this, so what he started to do was sow pastures, which got him out of trouble, but he bloody nearly sent him broke. Now, why I'm saying this, cropping in these low rainfall areas will have the same scenario as what happened to my father. Be very careful, because there's not enough bloody rain and it's not reliable enough to grow crops. The reason why, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, why people have got into growing crops, and this is in higher rainfall, well, a bit higher rainfall than here, not much, is that the grasslands had collapsed, as we've been talking about. It became less profitable to run animals on it, and they were struggling to survive financially on farms and saw cropping as the saviour. But, yeah.
Sort of, yeah, everything you're saying definitely makes sense, and exactly what I'm going through at Hawke. I've got a little 2008 block in the foothills. It's been grazed so hard.
Yep.
And it's all these bare patches. So I've found that when I cultivate it,
Yep.
don't allow it, but I cultivate it, it breaks it up and lets the moisture soak in
Yep.
to get something growing on it. That's why I'm doing it oats or
Yep.
just to get some growth back.
Yep.
In,
But what it'll do is eventually you'll either have to continue to do that because there's nothing left in the paddocks. And that's what he found, and that's what is happening in many areas around Australia, and people don't realise it. It seems good, we'll go into cropping, that'll be great. Really high costs of growing crops now. We're talking about cereal crops, grain, there, but cropping always collapses, like it did on my father. How much fertiliser can you put on? Every time you put fertiliser on, you're killing your soil life. Your soil ecosystem's collapsing. Eventually, you'll get to a stage where it won't be profitable to grow crops. Then what do? There's nowhere to go. You're in a corner. Like my father, he had got out of it because we were in a high enough rainfall area to be able to sow his pastures back. But I don't think you'll do that here. So, I mean, the warning bells are ringing. So really, really careful about cropping. Yeah. Especially in this rainfall area. So now I'm going to talk about cropping. but what happened with me, I changed the way I grew crops and the way I grazed animals. And I changed because I had a major bushfire in 79. I haven't got this information on this presentation. And so we lost 3,000 sheep and the whole property was like a bomb went off on it. So I had to change, and I did over time. I changed the grazing then, and I was struggling with the way we were growing crops as well. So I developed a different way of sowing crops because of declining grasslands. I was stuffing the grasslands as well, and increasing costs. This was in the 90s, 93. I developed a different way of growing crops called pasture cropping. Now, and really what I developed, hang on, might be the next slide. Yep. Because the grassland at home or the grass species are mainly summer growers, summer grassland species, and we were starting to get them back. It wasn't always like that. It was very, very few, but now it's more like that. These summer grasses, as I said before, go dormant in the winter, which is when we can sow our cereal crops. We can sow wheat, oats, barley, all those cereals in the winter when these grasses are in a dormant stage, when they've gone to sleep for the winter. And we're zero tilling, certainly not ploughing at all. And so...
What's zero tilling?
Oh, direct drilling.
Oh, right.
Yeah, like not ploughing. Yeah, just cutting, yeah. So, and what it did, was grew some quite good crops, but it helped in the restoration of the grassland. I only had an odd perennial grass around, and the reason why, I won't go into too much detail because it gets a bit complicated. The oats, that's an oat crop, produces a lot of sugars, a lot of root exudates into the soil, which feed microbes. Now, what was those microbes were feeding off the sugars of the plants, and I was using virtually no pesticides or very little fertiliser as well. So they were kept alive, restored the soil ecosystem, and what happened? The seed that was in the soil. Remember, I was talking about seed in the soil here. There was also seed in the soil on the property at home. Because I restored, this is totally accidental, I wasn't planning this, around the roots of the plant, of the oats, and created the conditions for those seeds to germinate that have sat there for 50 years or could have been a lot longer than that, native seed. So we created the conditions for them to germinate, and they did. And they germinated in the drill row where the crop was sown. So it can be done. I'm not suggesting you do that here, but that's a better way of growing crops than just nuking everything. And I'm only talking about, if you're going to grow any crops here, that's a better way of doing it, but I wouldn't even try to grow cereal crops, like harvest grain. I grow forage easily, quite cheaply, and I've got a bit on forages here as well in a minute. Because once you lose these grasslands, where do you go?
Colin, just when you were, what were you sowing with the oats?
What was I sowing with it?
Yeah.
As in anything else?
Yeah, like you've sown your oats.
Yeah.
Had you sown a perennial in the summertime that was then growing with the oats?
No, those plants came back because the seed was in the soil. I didn't sow any of those grassland species.
Because you got away from the wheat and sowed oats.
Wheat will do a similar thing, but wheat produces more oats produces more root exudates. It doesn't matter too much to be oats or wheat, but I was cutting back on pesticides, and so I wasn't killing everything. I wasn't killing the soil at the same time. Very little fertiliser. So the microbes in the soil had survived. Like ploughing destroys everything. If you put a plough through this great big steel dish through here and turn everything upside down, wouldn't do us much good. And microbes are the same. We turn soil upside down, it kills microbes. And they're our good guys, so we want to keep them alive. So no, all I said, in this sense, was sowing oats, direct drilled, like just a small slot, put the seed in, as a lot of cropping's done now. Nothing fancy about the equipment. And that's is what's happened. And that there's been a lot of research and stuff done all over the world, and it's happened pretty well everywhere. Happened in the US, there was some research work done, same story. We can use it to restore grasslands, but you need to have enough rain. I mean, don't get too carried away with this. The best way to fix this is with good grazing.
Just further to that last question, was your only change of practice going to no tilling, like zero tilling, as opposed to cultivating, or what else?
No, I changed a few things. Now what I did, any native grasses that were there, and there was an odd one in the paddock when I first started, because this was 30 something years ago. I started this, and so there was only a plant here and one over there, so there was seed in the soil, and the only thing that I changed, I haven't used Roundup for 30 odd years, so I stopped using Roundup. The bloody stuff works too well and kills everything. But I wanted to keep these plants alive, but I did use some selective herbicides, like just kill a few broadleaves and things like that. I wanted to keep these grasses alive. That was really important. Don't kill them if there's any there. There's no way that anyone could have dreamt this up. Like how this developed, I'll tell this story. I could keep an eye on time. A mate and I, who was a neighbour, lived over the hill. We used to talk about all sorts of things and try and solve the problems of the world. One night we got on the grog, and after about 10 or 12 beers, this is a true story, 10 or 12 beers, we thought of this rat bag idea. I mean, why are we killing all these grasses with Roundup? Why don't they're going to go? See, these things go dormant in the winter. These grasses, the summer ones, they're gone to sleep in the winter. What are we trying to kill them for? So that's all we did. We controlled a few weeds, not with Roundup. We went right off that to start with, and we found we could grow crops quite easily. But the idea started with two blokes on the grog, drunk one night. So, but it turned out it started to revolutionise cropping around the world. So alcohol is important for something. And there's quite a lot of adoption of this form around. It's actually perennial cover cropping. We won't get too far down that rabbit burrow. So did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to move here, or you'll ring the bell on me in a minute.
Yeah, well,
How are we going for time?
Well, I don't know if we don't mind extending the conversations in here.
But sorry, hang on. Also at the same time as I was growing those crops, I'd overlaid that with change of grazing management. That's also I did the two together. That's a really important thing. And I was using animals also to graze those paddocks really hard before I planted the crop. So the grazing component of it is vitally important also. We should never take animals out of any form of agriculture. We should always have animals in there. That's another story. So we can produce crops for grain or grazing. It will restore grasslands and improve soils and improve soil health and soil carbon and improve the farm ecosystem. But I wasn't going to go that far down with this talk, but there's interest in it. This may be of interest to you. Multi-species crops, same principle I used to sow these, because a lot of these things we can put in here that they can be. The next slide will show that. Hang on, I will go to the next slide. All sorts of different plants, like oats is almost always in there. Really, really high quality feed for livestock. Now here, if you do it here, it's only ever opportunistic. Put it in over it rains, basically. But so the costs need to be as low as you can have them. But we can grow really high quality stock feed, and that combination of plants does improve soils and soil health really rapidly. So we can fix it, but Yeah, but please don't do it on in areas where there's good grasslands and stuff. Yeah, but you can fix old cropping country with these methods.
Would you use all of those together, or
Yeah, they're all sown at the same time down.
all sown at the same time?
Yeah, all at the same time. And they're all winter species, all of those. Well, which is all you could do here anyway. Yeah, so. Now, what it does, I found, and we did, MLA did a trial on this, we did at home. So there's a lot of data we collected on this. Healthy animals, faster fattening, faster growth rates, more feed, all that. The weight gains were double on a multi-species crop compared to a single species barley crop. These were merino lambs on it. So, but, and these things, as I said, will improve the soil, these mix of species. It's all about species diversity. Species diversity will fix most things. How do we fix pasture? We shouldn't be sowing pasture here at all. I mean, fix the grasslands. There's not many things you can grow that's going to be any better than the grasslands you've got, or the grasslands that you can restore. Now, what I am going to do is, a minute, we'll go on. Right, and the reason why I just said don't try and grow pastures here, because we grow things that want to die and kill things that want to live. Just about everything that you could buy off the shelf here will die. So don't waste your money. Fix what you've got. What I found at home when I restored grassland, I'm going to try and finish this in 10 minutes. That work? Right.
Sounds good.
Now, I restored the grassland at home. It wasn't grassland before, but with the methods that I used, but what I spoke about. But what it did was create an enterprise for me that was never there before. And it's one of the most profitable of the lot. Now, this can work for you here if you restore your grasslands here. And now we harvest and sell about 2 tonne of native grassland species, native grass seeds here at home. And there's a few different things you can buy, brush harvesters and things like that. Well, like everything's expensive, but they're not too bad in the scheme of things. But Rowan, you put an application in whether you got it up or not.
Yeah, I don't know yet.
Probably shouldn't say. Yeah, no, go on.
We put an application in March to try to get like a grass grabber.
Yeah, which is sort of like that sort of machine.
That could be like a group could use it and look after it, and there'd be one for up here if
Yeah.
it is successful. So we'll keep you posted on the outcome of that. But if it doesn't get up, it'd be a good idea to try to get, because they're not that expensive, but
Yeah.
what are expensive for one person to
Yeah.
buy.
Yeah.
Like when you say expensive, how much?
I can't remember whether it was 5 or 6 grand.
Yeah. But these bigger ones start like a bit longer, could be maybe 20 or something. Yeah. But not only that, on these, we don't need to keep any of the seed ourselves. There's plenty there. But here, areas like these, you could get this seed and spread it or whatever on some degraded areas and just see how you go. Good grazing management's a far better way of doing it, but it's something that you could do to maybe speed things up. So I put it through a seed cleaner as well, and there's good demand. Most of it's used, this seed's used for mine rehabilitation work, but also some landholders are buying seed as well. But why I'm suggesting this is that this enterprise was created almost out of nothing. I didn't have a grassland. When we had restored the grassland, created an opportunity to harvest seed and then sell. Like 2 tonne of seed, and this seed's worth $70 a kilogram. So it's and hardly any cost. So yes, yeah, it's worth doing. Just give you something to think about. Another reason. What's that? Yep. Those ones there, the Paspaldium species, which grows there with Paspaldium distans. I assume you, from what you said before, you'd know what the species are. Red grass, which is Rothoclava macra. We've got some wallaby grass, that Dantonia. That one is the Paspaldium, or the Warrego we call that. There's a few different Paspaldiums, different types. Yeah, those types of seed. Yeah, go on.
Do you thresh it?
Through that, well, that's just I actually made that because they want $50,000 for a seed cleaner, so I bugger that, I'll make my own. But they're like the riddles on a header. Yeah, how that works is there's three, well, usually three in there. The Paspaldiums, and another one at Bracharia is like little round seeds, and they can be sown through a normal seed box. So there is some opportunity there, and give you something to think about. Other than maybe we can make some money off something else as well as sheep, without detracting from the sheep. We still run the same amount of sheep or more, but also harvest some seed as well when it rains. I just throw it through the small seed. Well, I don't sow it at home, but a lot of people sow it through like normal seed boxes and things like that. It doesn't have to be complicated. There's some really interesting. Yep. What we got? That one.
You can put it through a normal seed box. With an awn, it has to go through a
That's right. Yes, you need to spread the awn seeds need to be spread. Yep. Like something like red grass and kangaroo. Oh, yeah. No, that's right. Yes. Yep. It's just we up. Well, oh, geez, what did I press there? Bugger. Oh, hang on. Sydney University and Aboriginal Gamilaroi people were really involved in a very interesting project on, and most of the Aboriginal ladies are doing this, but rediscovering uses of grassland species, mostly what the Aboriginal people used to eat, because they lived off grasslands. So there's some really interesting work, researched really well with Sydney Uni. They've got a research centre in northern New South Wales, at Sydney Uni. So, but breaking bread from that's from one of the seeds that I harvested at home, at Warrego, the Paspaldium. So they're making, rediscovering a lot of their lost knowledge on producing food and breads and things from their grassland species. Big potential in that, like human consumption food. I better not tell the Vegemite story, it might take too long. So, sorry?
What's the protein levels like?
Now, pretty good. Protein and human health, that you can get that information like that. The Sydney Uni are putting out a fair bit of information on this on the internet, or probably if you put in Sydney University Narrabri that'll come up. Angela Patterson is the scientist doing the work. Drought. Okay, just to wind this up here now. How do we manage drought? I mean, yeah, if we really knew how to do it very well, we'd solve all of our problems. But there are ways to buffer against it a bit. And the way to do that is increase the water holding capacity of soil. And the way to do that is by increasing soil carbon. There's another thing too, soil structure. Improving soil structure will increase the water holding capacity. And guess what? The only practical way of increasing soil carbon and soil structure is with plants. Plants are the only things that can do that. So, in other words, grow more plants, and plant diversity is the key to this. There's a couple of soil samples from home, mine and my neighbour. My neighbour happens to be my brother. So we keep digging holes in his paddock. Don't tell him what we're doing. But I changed and he stayed the same. And I changed in the stuff we're talking about today. But it's specifically better grazing management. That's 2 foot, 500 mil. And we've built soil at least to 500 mil. There's still only 100 mil of soil there. And all that we did was change the management of that one. He stayed the same. That's the only difference. And there's been scientists crawling all over the place at home trying to work all this stuff out. I don't know whether they actually learn much because they don't listen, I don't think, sometimes. But an increase of 1% carbon, now it is more difficult here in these lower rainfall areas, will increase the water holding capacity of soils. And it will increase it by 168,000 litres per hectare. That number doesn't mean anything except that's nearly 17 millimetres of rain on every rainfall event. Like if you get 17 mil of the soil, if you only by 1%, it's not, which isn't a lot increase in soil carbon, it'll increase the water holding capacity, like creating a sponge really, but by at least 17 mil. So you've had 17 mil of rain. As it dries out, it has the capacity to fill up again.
Colin, can you get to a point where you've gone too far and your soil gets waterlogged?
No, the opposite happens. That's a very good question because everyone assumes that. Now, waterlogging and hard compacted dry soils are caused by the same thing. And it's about dysfunctional soil. So if we fix one, we can fix the other. We don't necessarily have to, if we overfix this one, we won't go to the other one. Yep. So now, if you look at this here, it becomes really quite interesting. Our regional grasslands had 10 to 6% carbon. Now these ones here probably didn't have that much, but they probably had 4 or 5 at least. Now, if we look at that level, many of our grasslands in Australia had the capacity to store over 1 million litres, per hectare in these grasslands. And if you think about that water holding capacity that used to be in our grassland soils, that would okay, we can't change whether it's going to rain or not, but the extra water that's in the soils will certainly buffer against most just dry seasons, or if not all dry seasons. Big droughts, well, that's another story, but it's going to get you further along the way, and it'll recover a lot faster on the other end. So that's the key to that. And guess what? The way to do that is to restore the grassland. There's no downside in any of this stuff. If we fix the grassland, we'll fix all of that. So, how do we restore our properties? Change the way we graze animals, which is the main thing here. Grow more plants. Plant diversity will restore our property, soils and profit. And that's my ad for my book, which I have over there. Oh, yeah, really quite straightforward. I mostly left that out because Alejandro was going to talk about that side of things. That was why. But what I did at home was, and it was easier at home than here because it's smaller areas and high rainfall, but I combined them all the mobs quite simply. And that mob I had on there was a couple of thousand ewes. We normally run 2,000 to 3,000 ewes in a mob. Over time, what I did was just start to subdivide some paddocks. I kept it really quite simple, and started to subdivide so that. If you, instead of having 6 mobs, if you put them all to one, then you can create a rest period, and it's all about recovery, or resting those plants. So that's really all I did. It was actually quite simple, And just put as many animals as you can together. Don't have lots everywhere because that won't work. And it is that simple. And that's really all I did. Over time, I just subdivided some paddocks and got the grazing a bit better by subdivisions. Alejandro does it a little bit differently to that, which he'll talk about. But yeah, no, it's a good question, but I hadn't put that in here because Alejandro's going to talk mainly about that.
So what about the overabundant natives and ferals?
Ah, yeah, buy a gun. No, sorry. They can be a problem. There's no doubt about that. And again, here, some of the people in that like inside country have put exclusion fences. You can't do that here. So no, it is a problem. Alejandro, you've got some ideas on that, how you manage all those the animals, not kangaroos, obviously.
No, kangaroos.
So, because they can be ahead of where the animals are eating the best feed. So, yes, it can be a problem, yeah.
You keep saying can be, it's a terrible problem.
Yeah, but it can be a problem with that form of grazing as well, any form of grazing. Yeah. How do you water stock here? Have you, like, what some people have done is simply in rangeland country is turn the water on and off, like so there's no water anywhere on the property for roos, and the neighbour all gets them, which that's one way it's been done. I saw an ingenious method which I really love. This guy put a electric fence around, a wire right round the water trough, and kangaroo, like sheep, fine, they just walk over this electric wire. Did it with a solar system, and the kangaroo, because the tail hanging out the back, as he puts his nose in the water, his tail's sitting on an electric wire, of course, and they jump about 10 feet in the air and don't come back. So that I thought was very good.
Yeah, I know. And one thing, folks, is we can talk the whole day about what we don't want, but let's focus on what we want.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Colin, is there a rule of thumb with the rest period? Like you're talking about rotationally grazing a large mob. Is there a rule of thumb for how long the rest period has to be, or do you need to know your species and how long they need individually?
There's no rules really with this. You have to work it out. The only rule I would say is that go to a grazing management course, but someone that understands this country as well, like a holistic management grazing course, and you girls will organise that. That really is the place. Then you get a really good understanding of it, but definitely someone that understands this country.
Colin, I'm just wondering, when you changed where you made your mobs a lot bigger, did you have trouble with pressure on your waters then? You can. I've just got, well, we've got troughs and dams, but no, it didn't seem to be a problem at all, and I think you're going to talk about that too. Oh, no, maybe you won't. But water is a critical part of anything, as we know from these dries. So we need to make sure we've got a good water system in any form of grazing. But water can be a bit of a stumbling block for people adopting this, because you need a few more water points. But no, it isn't really a problem. Not long term. Ideally, yeah. Yep. Yep.
Especially with the horse powering the land up. Like you've got mobs of 2,000 on one water point and all the dust and.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Also, what about lambing rates? Like lambing in the bigger mobs, do you find you have more losses?
That's a good question. Now, what I do, I've tried lambing in 2000 in a mob, and if it's a good season, it's all right. But if it's a bit dry, it's a bloody disaster. Now, so what I split them into smaller mobs just to lamb, and let them rotate around a few paddocks, and So I've tried a lot. It's a very good question. It's just one of those things. How do you manage some of these problems with it? And that's what I've done. I just bring them back to lamb in smaller mobs, and that seems to be fine. Yeah. But some people do lamb in big mobs, and yeah.
You ready? Yeah. Sounds great. I mean, one of the problems that I have is that Colin just set a lot of expectations from my side, but it's good. So yeah, I'm actually in a very similar environment that you are. Also, the thing is that I'm here because Rowena promised me that he will take me to greener pastures. So I'm from Chihuahua, Mexico. Chihuahua is a northern state in Mexico, and is part of our state is in the Chihuahuan Desert. That desert is the largest desert of North America, going to 3 states in the US and 4 states in Mexico. So everybody knows the name Chihuahua, right? Chihuahua, little dogs. So when you go to Chihuahua, you drive into the highway, you're gonna see the original Chihuahua dogs running along the hills. That's pretty interesting. Just be careful when you get out of your car because they are wild, so they may actually start chasing you, biting you. But don't worry because they bite very little. But remember that there are many, so they're like piranhas. So I hope you believe what I'm saying. So this is actually not the Chihuahuan Desert. This is central Mexico, but I just want to let you know that how powerful is livestock. I mean, livestock is the one that is bringing biology. So probably most of you, well, probably all of you know about tequila, but this is the plant that they actually produce tequila from, agave. But the problem we have is that we are producing what they call the blue deserts, because this is blue agave. So we were called to help this guy, and really the only tool that we use is livestock. So it's not like a before and after picture. It's a picture that from a neighbor after 3 years of us using livestock to actually regenerate that land, because 99% of the tequila is produced like that. That's why some people are boycotting tequila, because they say, well, destroying the. But then after 2 years, already that's a place that they got about 30 inches, 35 inches of rain. I'm gonna be exchanging inches and kilometers, not much different than you. But then look what happened after 2 years. I mean, just using livestock. No. Just putting livestock. Obviously, as Colin said, is animal impact and rest. But then obviously is controlling the animals there. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna put a big pasture, let them be. No way. I mean, it's electric fence, it's daily moves. In that case, well, you can see the sheep, but it's actually a multiple species: donkeys, horses, and sheep. So he actually was kind of full-fledged. We never recommend anyone to use multiple species, but what that guy is a bit more smaller scale. And what we saw is we start bringing insects that are going to help us to control the pests. And well, you can see there all the multiple species that the guy is using. And actually, this guy original idea was to come up with a good agave to sell to the tequila distillers, but then he ended up actually going all the way through. So now he's selling the first regen tequila in the world, which is pretty cool. Now, the agave is being sold by the pound on the sugars, like bricks. When you have that diversity of plants, the bricks go higher, so he's actually getting more of the agave, because now the agave has more sugars on that kind of context. Sure.
Is the agave grazed, or is it just not palatable?
It is palatable. The horses are the ones like usually don't mess with the agave. And then we have seen then the sheep and then the donkeys. The sheep sometimes bite the agave, and the donkeys also bite the agave. But remember that it's all about keeping a good nutrition for your livestock. So if your livestock is actually happy with what they have outside of the agave, they're not supposed to bite the agave. I mean, remember that most problems we have as ranchers fall into two categories: nutrition and genetics. So we always talk a lot about nutrition, but we seldom talk about genetics. And we as ranchers, we have a very powerful tool, which is selection and culling. I work with an almond orchard in the US, the one you want to talk to them, the Burroughs, right? Yeah. And they asked me, because they were having a problem with the sheep killing the young trees. Start actually biting the young trees. So the shepherd was on that let's say talk, because it was just a half a day talk, the Pacines Ranch in California. So I asked the shepherd, so when you turn in the sheep into that, because they have obviously grass below the almond orchard, when you turn in the shepherd, how's the manure? Is it good consistency, the manure, or is it a bit loose manure? And how's the grass? And he told me, well, the grass is growing and the manure sometimes is loose. So you are now providing the sheep with a good feed because it's too much of a green stuff. And what is the sheep doing? Actually, it's looking for something to compensate, right? Exactly. Mm-hmm. So when we actually graze in a ranch, we combine the grazing with a long rest period. So when you have the growing season, whatever is your growing season, it rains here when it rains, in winter, right? And for us, it rains in summer, the monsoon. So we were used to open the gate during the green up, and the green up was like this. So our cows start having loose manure because we're not giving our livestock the ability to select between, like this. Well, we always call like green and gold and gray. So green and gold is almost impossible for you to forget because it's your flag, right? But we're always trying to stick with green and gold. Gray is already useless. But when we actually, because of the long rest periods that we provide to our pastures or paddocks, when we open that gate and there's the green up, we are allowing the cow to select green and gold. So that way they keep that manure consistent. So we don't have that loose manure. And remember, if you're not providing that opportunity for the livestock to select, your cows are going to overeat up to 30% more grass. So you're wasting your grass. You're not only compromising the immune system of your livestock, you're wasting 30% because they got into a very expensive process internally of trying to convert that protein into energy. And if we keep doing that, then we're gonna compromise the immune system and probably it's gonna show up as a pink eye. Because so many times we as ranchers, we say, oh, pink eye is the seed head, is the fly. No. It's the immune system is compromised and then the bacteria is gonna get in. So, well, trying to explain to you why the livestock actually could potentially bite that agave. It may be quite an unbalance. So the first thing that we did there is to total rest. I mean, stop the chemicals, stop that stuff, let it rest. And you know what show up there? A bunch of weeds. Weeds, yeah. So it's pretty normal, when you're healing the land, the weeds come in to actually help you heal the land. Everybody familiar with thistle? Raise your hand who likes thistle. Oh, you were going to raise your hand? Don't be afraid. I need at least one more. Colin, you like thistle? Yes. Okay, so I have one. Why do we like thistle? Why do you think we like thistle?
That's great.
Because is help us healing the land, right? We would be, remember that I have two kinds of neighbors. The one that think that I'm crazy and the ones that know that I'm crazy. So this all is going to show up in compacted soils, and that's why the taproot is going to actually help us. So when I ask the ranchers to actually, let's say, increase the density of the grazing, you know, you have this perennial grass here, the gap in between. You're going to be growing weeds in between the grasses, and that, I think you're on the right track. So why nature puts a lot of these, you know, spines or thorns and thistle? Can you get that thistle out of, pull it out with your bare hands? Can you? So what is nature telling you? Exactly, right. So that's where we are here. Well, now we were here, and then we go to our ranch, which is part of this desert. So this is a video before getting to my ranch that gives you an idea of the condition of the land there. It's really bad. I mean, it's really ugly. I mean, it's like that. The water cycle completely broken, compacted soils. It doesn't matter right now how much rain you get. Nothing is going to happen. Well, yeah, it's going to happen. You're going to go even more downhill. Because let me tell you something, folks. If I ask you, how are you feeling about now and 10 years ago? And someone from here tells me, you know, Alejandro, well, remember, I'm Alejandro here in the US, I'm Alex in Mexico. Okay? So I think we're about the same. I think you're lying to me. Because we're working with nature, folks. And nature never stands still. So you're improving or you're degrading your land. There's only two choices here. So that's how the nearby areas, my ranch are, but it's quite expansive. I mean, you go to all northern Mexico, all western US, and it's turning into big deserts. And it's all about management. So think about that erosion. Our ranch is 30,000 acres, and we got about 9 inches of rainfall per year. But on the last 3 years, we only got 7 on all the 3 years, 7 inches. So it's been a tough drought, and I'm going to tell you what separates, as we say sometimes, men from boy. I mean, men from boy, like how we deal with that drought. But the clue here is that before getting to my ranch is this big gully with this fence. So this fence was put just 50 years ago. This is set stocking, you know. They never move the cows. They are born, grow, reproduce, and die on the same paddock. But look at this layer of carbon. It wasn't put by a woody plant. There used to be tall grasslands there. Maybe when I was a kid, the tall grasslands were gone, but we still have good grasslands there, remember? They're gone because, you know, eventually cows, if we don't manage them well, or sheep, they will destroy the ecosystem because we are not mimicking nature. We're not emulating nature. But other than that clue that we're seeing, we have written evidence from the Spaniards when it was New Spain, because the Spaniards were 300 years in what is now Mexico and part of the US. And they were trying to find a way, this priest going from Santa Fe, New Mexico, all the way to Monterey, California. So when they went through Salt Lake, which is really, really dry right now, Utah, they said that they never seen such a beautiful lush grasslands. So yeah, we used to have beautiful grasslands. It's just that the potential is there. As Colin said, the seed bank is there. And even if you happen not to have the seed bank underground, if you create the right conditions, then nature is going to put the seed that you need. because there's seed everywhere. Wind, rain, livestock, wildlife. Well, there was a question here, I'm sorry, but that question about the kangaroo, right? The roots moving. Well, in the US, we have these flying cows. There's no fence for them. Elk. So sometimes ranchers, are concerned about, oh, what if I grow more grass? Well, you're gonna grow a lot of grass, I can tell you that. So let's not worry about that, because yeah, there are problems. Suddenly you have 5 to 1,000 elk in your place. But ranchers doing this kind of management have been able to figure out how to deal with elk. So it's not really like a showstopper. That's what I wanted to tell you. Don't worry about the roots. They're gonna come because you're gonna have better grasses than probably the nearby. But there will be feed for everyone. So then there are these statistical maps now, a bit more recent, or specifically or state. And then it used to say that the climate was really nice. Right now in my ranch, we are about, in summer, 5 degrees cooler than my neighbors in summer. So we start creating a microclimate there. And then the other interesting data about that statistical map is that, I mean, we used to have incredible diversity of animals. Most of them are still there, but some of them, like jaguars and even grizzly bears, wolves. But the two that really grabbed my attention were that we used to have in our state otters and beavers all across the state. So the first thing that we actually break is the water cycle. Because let me ask you this, and I know you're in a drought, I understand that, but what is the major limitation of grass productivity? Is it water or is it air in the soil? I do believe that it's air in the soil, because if you have compacted soils, remember the picture of Colin putting deep root system, kind of average, and shallow root system. Your root system will not go farther than when there's air. It doesn't matter if you have moisture on the profile. Have you seen a cornfield till chemically and then a strong air? Up, right? It just falls down. Because if you go and look at a root system of a corn, which is kind of a grass, it goes here. It doesn't matter if you have moisture, and it goes to the sideways because it's compacted. You just split it. The same happened to our grasslands. It's compacted, shallow root system. You're completely exposed to drought. Actually, when you have such a shallow root systems, probably you need the rain every week. It won't happen, I can tell you. It doesn't matter if it is perennial grass, it will have a shallow root system. So for us, the major limitation of grass productivity will be air. So how do we put air in the soil? Anyone have an idea? Deeper roots, exactly. So we're going to be feeding the microbiology, which we call it microherd, with a plant doing photosynthesis. So it's very important to actually for us to extend the green season. That is crucial for us as ranchers, because obviously, as Colin said, cool season grasses, warm season grasses, diversity. But even if you just have the same grass, if you manage well, then that grass is going to be extending its green season. And what happens when we extend the green season? We keep doing the photosynthesis year round. We keep feeding the microbiology. Because remember that microbiology sometimes changes every 30 days. If we have the land that we sow like this cropland, nothing, well, there's not going to be life in the soil. So we extend the green season, and what's the other benefit? We don't have to feed our cows. When I joined the ranch, we were feeding our cows for 6 months. Because our green season, it was just right when it rained, and then it shut down. And then when you have mostly gray, no green, a little bit of yellow, you have to supplement your cows or your sheep. This is when it rains at the ranch, so we have like a mountain range, flats, hills, different. And this is when it snows. Many people are not aware, not even the Americans are aware that it does snow in the US. So the wall doesn't stop the snow. And then that's our rainy season. So we pretty much have to rely on these 3 months, which is a monsoon, July or September. And then we're going to try to grow grass for the next 18 months. So we've been hit by the droughts are pretty hard right now, that we started with a 1 year rest between grazings. And then we're going to 18 months, and then some people are going to 24 months. Because think about it. Let's think about your peace of mind. Let's say that you have grass for 18 months or 24 months. Would you be pretty much, like peace of mind? Yeah. Because if it rains, it's going to rain on top of the grass. And some people may start saying, well, but my sheep or my cows, they need a more vegetative stage of the grass at optimal point. Well, how we deal with that, we promote more diversity. So remember that we're working with the bird conservancy organizations. You're going to see the presentation. And they do the count of birds, but they do the count of grasses. So in 10 years, we were able to go from 20 different grasses to 80 different grasses. As Colin said, you have a lot of different grasses. It's pretty impressive that you don't have elk, bison, things like that, but you have a diversity of grasses incredible. So the problem we have as ranchers, we're just shooting too low. We got to raise that bar, saying, I want to have 50, 100 different grasses, but not only grasses, but forbs, these flowering plants. Have you measured the breaks on your grasses? That's the question. Have you measured the sugars? Like they measure the grapes or the agave. Have you used a refractometer to measure the breaks of the grass? Anyone? No?
I'm just, if you're not sure, he's saying Brix, B-R-I-X.
Yes.
The sugar content. So like that, yeah, you have a little,
It-
that little thing and you put a drop of like
Yeah.
the grape juice on it and then
I mean,
how much sugar.
it's like a baseline. Like you say, okay, I'm going to measure the breaks in summer. It did rain. It's very, very impossible to do it right now. So it gives you an idea of the sugar content of your grass. Well, in the US it's about 5. We measure some like, in the northern part of Australia it was a lot of green. It was like 8. It was not that bad. But my point is that these flowering herbs or forbs will always go almost twice as much on bricks than grasses. So if you can actually promote more forbs, your cows will average more, it will put more pounds. So this is the reality we're facing. We're getting less rain. This is a 40-year. So when my dad, let's say that the ranch has been in the family for 50 years. Let's say that my dad took the first 20 years, I took the next 20 years. So my dad was getting droughts of 8 inches. Oh my God, give me those 8 inches, I have no problem. What you say was the average rainfall here?
The average is 277, but the median's only 230.
It's 11 inches.
Yeah, 11.
11 inches.
Hasn't rained for 9 years though.
So what do you do with 11 inches? That's a lot of water. Right? I mean, I think one of the most beautiful things about what we do is that when I joined the ranch like here. I think on one of these peaks. My God, we have like, it doesn't reflect exactly, but we got 20 inches that year. You know what happened with 20 inches? Oh my God, it was horrible. Because we didn't infiltrate. It destroyed a lot of dams. I mean, and then in a few months, we were in a drought because our soils were compacted. Nowadays, we don't need to destock, and we could actually potentially run our winners to be yearlings with 6 inches. That is going to give you this resilient in your ranches. So you will need way less rain to do more. Well, this is I don't know if we have sound, but let's put it. No, we don't have sound. It's very. But this is a small video we did for a meeting we had. I got my nephew and he put up that video. It's not professional, but it kind of give you an idea, like the context around the ranch. Yeah. And then that's the ranch. So we are like an island of grass. Well, we don't have bison, but that is nearby the ranch. And that's our ranch again. So we've been able to grow grasses where there was nothing. We didn't seed, we didn't irrigate. We just bring the biology of the livestock to actually start waking up all the seed bank. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. So how do we do it? I think Colin already explained. We use animal impact on a big herd, and then see, I'm not really herding or driving anymore. I think let's see, I'm there. Oh. So they follow you. I mean, we move twice a day. We used to move every other week. Then we start moving every week. And because we work as a community, then I start moving daily. And then I call one of my friends and say, is there really a difference between moving every day and moving every 2 days? And he said, yeah, okay, let's do it. So you build confident working as a team, as a community. So we never expected to grow these 7 feet tall grasses in the middle of the desert. But we know that the seed bank was there. And we only need 6 inches to grow this kind of grass. It's pretty impressive. But I feel that we were overgrazing that grass because we were rotating 3 times per year the same paddock. The same paddock was rotated, and then I have seen that in a lot of places, including places in Australia where they have buffalo. Because what we were taught, you have to keep the buffalo healthy. You have to keep the buffalo with the photosynthesis going. So don't take too much of the buffalo. Well, our approach is slightly different. We're going to take as much as possible as long as our cows are happy. We don't want to touch our cows. The cows are actually driving the whole thing. If I see that the majority of my cows are struggling, I need to slow down, take less, open up more. Same time, we don't change the time. If we're saying we're moving twice a day, then we open the paddock so we can provide feed for half a day. If it is in a drought, we open more. If it is in a rainy season, we got shorter. We don't get too much into, you have to graze like 100 cows per acre. That's kind of difficult to say. No, I mean, we don't even mind what is the density. All what we're doing is just provide feed, estimating the feed for half a day.
Does that grass get too rank for the stock instead of like being sweat shorter? Like when you graze it, does it get sweeter?
Yes, but here the point is that you are trying to promote diversity. So because also, there's this theory as well where you have to graze at a certain point, right, the grass. Let's say the best time to graze a grass is at a boot stage. But we're only talking about grasses. How about forbs? How about legumes? So we have done, a friend of mine had done the experiment of actually going, well, that was in dry tropics, going from 30-day rest, which everybody was doing it, trying to hit those tropical grasses at a stage that is not like very rough, to 60 days, I mean context, right? 60 days, so he starts seeing more legumes and more forbs. So the heifers gain more gain by being able to select more plants than you trying to hit that optimal point. That's my point. Yeah, I mean, it gets pretty rough, but if you are improving your soils, the green is going to be at the bottom. I mean, obviously, that's going to be lush green during the rainy season, and certain after that, up to a point before winter. But with diversity, they can take that roughage. They actually need that roughage because, you know, you cannot live just on forbs and legumes. They're going to have pink eye as well. Too much of a green. The same happened with the macro herd. I mean, some people believe that, oh, we want more legumes. More legumes is better. To a point. Because if you throw a lot of legumes, or your system has, well, nature doesn't do that. Nature actually gives you exactly what you need at that point. But if you throw a lot of legumes on let's say, on a multiple species, then what happened with the macro herd? Oops, too much nitrogen. We're going to still eating the carbon. So you go backwards instead of forward. So the same happened with the cows. But it's diversity, for us, the name of the game. Forbs, you know, shrubs, legumes, obviously grasses, cool season grasses, warm season grasses. So as I was telling you, we size the paddock. You always have to have that building flexibility in your system to actually adapt to the current conditions. In a drought, our ranch has 360 permanent electric fence paddocks. So we may actually, one war, we may actually ended up just going through the 360 paddocks, 350. But on a rainy year, let's say 2022, we got 11 inches. That was a lot of water for us. And then we got, out of those 11, we got 9 inches in 1 week. So we were able to infiltrate a lot of water, and it was a good year for us. Well, many people say, oh, it's a terrible year. We got all the water in 1 week. Well, it depends really how you're actually, the work you did before, and then how your land is prepared or not. So we ended up building 1,000 paddocks because we started splitting the permanent ones as, you know, like cross fencing, and then no back fence to the water because we share the water troughs to multiple paddocks on every larger, we call it pasture. And yeah, it was because, why? Because when it's so lush and green, what you need for half a day is quite small. It's all about, you know, that's what we call that the art of grazing because you're trying to size it, estimate it, how much they need at that particular moment. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay. So this is a pretty good spot at the ranch. So they already grazed that. It was a polywire here. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know what was the density. But, and then we take that fence down, and now they're grazing the next paddock. So it will vary a lot, the densities. I mean, it depends on the how much available forage is and what time of the year. This used to be our winters, folks. Remember, we want to stick ourselves with green and gold, like your flag. Well, that was a lot of gray. Obviously, we have to supplement for 6 months because there was not much for the cows to eat. But then, through being constant and disciplined, then now our winters look like this. And, well, I remember when the bird conservancy guys went there and they say, you know, Alex, this plant is not allowing you to grow more grass because it has an allelopathic effect. Which, you know, I finally tend to agree with them, but I think what they are not taking into account is the biology of livestock. That changed the whole game. So what we are applying livestock here, even just probably passing by, or there's probably a spot nearby that has grass. And what the cows do pretty well is they graze where there's grass, and they put all the manure where there's no grass. They know what they need to do. Or in some extremes, people put hay there, but we haven't really put hay. And look what happened. We were able to grow grass among that woody plant. I tell people, you know, the good thing is that the grass cannot read the books, that it cannot grow on that spot. And even, look at that, we even create this mist, you know, this dew, yeah, in the desert. This is another, like, well, a picture. This is my side after spring, 9 months of no rain. And then this is our side, this is the neighbor side. The green up, no rain. So what is preventing the neighbor from growing green grass? Animal impact. If you go to the western US, obviously I'm taking for granted the northern Mexico, but the western US, we are desertifying the western US because of lack of animal impact. It's not anymore overgrazing. It's the lack of animal impact what is killing the grasses, because grasses really need to be worked, need to be eaten, need to be, you know, a massage. Urine, saliva, manure, hoof action, even the act of breathing promotes grass growth. And then in summer, we actually got more lush grass than the neighbor. So I tell people sometimes the problem is that we work with these institutions, organizations, even governments, that the quick response without thinking much, and that's why we call sometimes this management rational grazing, which means it's not rotational, it's a thinking process. So they say, oh no, you know, you have too many animals. It's not looking good. Let's destock. Well, I'm running 3 times more animals per acre than my neighbor. So it's how you manage your animals. And I've been telling these days that if we have something magic going on in the western US, and then suddenly all the ranchers says, wow, yeah, we love that stuff, we know how to do it, we wouldn't be able to do it, folks. We don't have enough cattle. Yep. Look at this picture, driving to my ranch, same day, same precipitation in summer. No irrigation, just different management. And obviously, when we say about natural succession, if you have bare ground and you want perennial grasses, as Colin said, you know, because perennials are the ones that are going to save the day. It's not annuals. I mean, everything is helpful, but at the end of the day, we're targeting for perennials. You cannot go from bare ground to perennials. You have to respect the natural succession of bare ground and then annuals being weeds or other annuals, and then short perennials. So look, for example, in my context, that's what happened. Pretty aggressive here, you know, toxic plants, cactus, everything has a thorn. That's a pretty clear message for nature, saying, you know who's going to bat last, right? You're not the ones who's going to bat last. I'm the one. And then, well, this is not the pigweed that you call pigweed here, but it's an amaranthus, right? Yeah. So when we apply, but just want to clarify, it's not your pigweed, it's an amaranthus, because when I was saying this, people were like, what? When we apply this intensive grazing after 2-3 years in a place that has extra water because it's in a valley, the pigweed, the amaranthus, not your pigweed, I was riding my horse and it was like this. So, and then because of the long rest periods, it was completely mature. It was actually very uncomfortable to ride there because you got that stuck into everything. But I was concerned, say, what's going to happen when we turn in the cows? Well, the cows actually trample everything. Imagine that weed was like this thick, tall. Just thinking about all the root system that left in the soil. So we never saw the pigweed again. And we ranchers are very concerned, oh, if you don't kill that weed, it's going to spread all over. No. I mean, we change the conditions of the soil and it will not show up again.
Would you say the good thing about also the amaranth was that it had a good deep root as well?
A taproot?
Yeah, the taproot.
Yes.
So break it up and add more yield to the soil?
Yes. Yeah, probably the root system was like this deep. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. So it was really a good soil, but nature says, okay, let me throw this now, boom. And then we let it mature because it took us a year to go back. So everything was falling, the cows were breaking everything, but there was a little bit of grass at the bottom. Now we have really good grasses on that spot, and the pigweed, the amaranthus, never show up again. And there's millions of seeds. You know, it just, nature says, this is what you need now. This is what you need now. We need to change our mindset to say how nature is trying to help us. Like the bird guys are trying to protect this Aplomado falcon. But the yuccas are dying. So they're blaming us ranchers that they said that the cows actually are breaking the yuccas. No. The yuccas depend on the grasses. As you see, that yucca most likely is going to die eventually because that guy is doing pretty set stocking grazing. But you can see yuccas thrive on grasses. Same here in Australia. I mean, I don't know about here, it's my first time here, but many places have forests. You know, like savanna. So you're losing some of your best trees because when you lose your grasslands, you're breaking the water cycle, and then your trees are going to start dying. You're losing diversity not only on grasslands but on your trees. So this is one of the few pictures that we took, like a succession of things, like through the years. So that was summer 2015, kind of bare ground, and then summer 2018 weeds, and summer 2021 now we were able to establish grasses. That's when we actually bump it up, the number of paddocks to 300, and then we can subdivide it depending on the year. And I think at that time we were giving 1 year of rest between grazing on the same paddock. I think we already explained that. That as well. We're in a very dynamic, working with nature is pretty dynamic. And that's what we're talking also here, raising the bar. Raising the bar, I mean, like, well, that's a verse from the Bible. The promised land of milk and honey. So I was wondering, what does that mean to us? And I say, okay, I know. So in order for you to produce milk, you need energy, right? And to produce honey, you need flowers. So I want to be honest with you. I don't want to be a grass farmer anymore. It's pretty limited. I prefer to be a fall farmer or whatever that is. Because if you manage your land well, you're going to start seeing more forbs or flowering herbs in your landscape. And you know, remember the bricks, the sugars? Well, those are going to get your cows fat and produce more milk. And that's going to help the bees big time. Because right now the bees are depending on these mesquites instead of producing a lot of honey on the grasslands. It's like a reward that nature gives you because grasses help you to fix the water cycle. And then the forbs really need a better water cycle. And then they're going to start popping up among the grass. Like this one, this is a pretty good forb for us. But it only grows where we have established the grasslands. So this is kind of like the way we would like to see our grasslands. Colorful, you know, full of life. We have donkeys with our cows. We're targeting for 10% donkeys. Why do we have donkeys? Well, many people that have donkeys for protection on that part of the world, but we want to do a more even grazing, like taking all that very rough, oxidized plants, and donkeys are pretty good at doing that. And there's a study in Kenya that adding donkeys to the herd, because the herders were complaining about zebras. The control group was not only cattle, and the other was cattle with donkey, and cattle did better with daily gains and also pregnancy with donkeys. I see donkeys as our cover crop or service crop, because many farmers say, oh no, I don't want but one plant because your plants are going to be taking the water. Or why are you having donkeys if the donkeys are eating the grass from your cows? Well, for me, it's more like a cover crop.
How do you go with managing these donkeys? Are they pretty placid around you? Are they sort of just like cows? Or?
Yeah, actually, they are easier to manage than cows, because donkeys, at least our donkeys, really respect the electric fence. They don't mess with electric fence. It's like horses. They are so afraid of electric fence, and it takes time for them to bond it to, because the first time we put the donkeys there, everybody was running on different directions. Like, oh, what is that weird creature? And they got lost on the mountain range for 2 months. I was concerned because we have mountain lions there, but no, they get out. I mean, my foreman grabbing when they were down to a trough, and now they are banded. I mean, they are following each other. So we usually just move the cows or open the gate, and the donkeys follow through. It seems like they're never in a hurry. And see, they're crazy. They eat all kind of stuff there. So one really very important indicator, folks, is the leaf to stem ratio. Look at these two grasses. It's strong. This is a pretty dominant grass in the Chihuahuan desert. It's the tobosa grass. So this is one of my neighbors, and this is our place, and both of them are the same species. But what happened is, with the proper grazing management, you're going to produce more leaves and less stems. And the leaves are going to feed better your cows and the sheep, because usually those animals don't like to eat the stems. And so why do you think we have, well, I asked some experts on grasses to tell me what grasses were these, and they say, yeah, this tobosa. How about this? Oh, we have never seen that. So why do we have more leaves here? Any idea? Better water cycle, yeah. It's like they convert, instead of going up, they put up like a big canopy. Mm-hmm. Because as the population of microorganisms grow, we need a bigger panel. So then the shape or form of your grass is going to change to have more leaves. The same grass, and we're talking about the same kind of grass. And then, kind of similar to what Colin showed, like this is perennial, but overwested with very shallow root system. Actually, this grass is probably going to die eventually. And this is the same grass after a few years with a very deep root system. I had to cut that, and I pulled this out with my hands. So unfortunately, a lot of grasses we have, they're struggling to survive, and eventually they're going to die. This is when we talk about the breaks. That's how we measure the breaks. And then this is the beautiful thing about the breaks. When you improve, when you improve the water cycle, when you increase the microbiology, then you're going to increase the metrics, the measurement of the breaks. And then your animals are going to start gaining more. When you're actually at a point where you're just trying to get more pounds for your animals, the time of the moves are late in the day, because you let the breaks just go up to the plant. And then it will also protect your plants from pests. As you increase the breaks, the plants are going to get stronger to repel grasshoppers and things like that. So we're targeting for 2 digits on grasses. Usually the forbs are already there, but they will improve as well. So how about fighting these invasive species, right? Woody plants, thorny plants, cactus, cholla, prickly pear. Well, we are actually removing all of them by growing thick grasses. That's why I told you early on, guys, let's focus on what we want. Because we can spend time and time working on what we don't want, but let's work on what we want, and nature is going to take care of the rest. So woody encroachment. Like grasses are actually killing this creosote, killing the mesquite, killing actually larger mesquites. We're going to skip this section because I know you don't have fires in Australia, okay? Right? Well, we have a big problem in the US with fires last year. Terrible season. I even got sick. I went to Idaho. I thought it was cloudy, it was smoke. And then I got sick there, and I got back 2 months after, and it was the same. So what's going on, folks, with the fires? With the fires, I think the approach we're taking to, even if they allow us to put livestock, the goal is wrong. It's not the correct goal, because the goal is to remove this dead material, right? I think the goal should be to fix the water cycle. So the trees will not help you to fix the water cycle. They grow where there's water. It's the grasslands, the grasses, under those forests that are going to help us fix the water cycle. And we need livestock properly managed in our forests. So look at this picture. Well, let me first tell you the research. So you say, well, this guy is coming up with a lot of stuff. So this is a NASA study that directly correlates the number of fires to the dryness of the soil. The drier your soils, the more fires you're going to get, natural fires. Why? Because we already screwed it up, and nature has a way to fix things. But the thing is that our times are not the same as nature times. So nature is a natural, event. It's just that when it's so dry and so hot, because the trees don't repel the heat, they actually cause more heat. So you got this storm, what we call dry storms. Dry storms is where you get the lighting, but you don't get the rain. So there used to be a time where you get the lighting, and then the rain put off, the fire. Now we got lighting and no rain because the bare ground under the forest. And this is a good example from the US where you got this protected forest. Don't graze it, don't touch it. And then what nature does? Oh, there's bare ground underneath. Let's put more trees. Because that's how nature responds. He put some plant there to keep the photosynthesis, to keep life going. And then these trees, well, this is no graze at all, and this is a guy that is grazing. And what happens? You're creating a big bomb here, and it's going to be a horrible fire. I mean, like I was in Oregon with a client, and I'm glad that I didn't say that. Oh, you're gonna create a fire, because half of his ranch was completely burned. 200-year-old of these ponderosa pines were burned to the ground, because there were some spots of his ranch that you couldn't even walk. Because nature was responding, to bare ground. Oh, I'm going to put more trees. I'm sorry, you're doing such a poor job. I'm going to reset the whole thing. Fire. This is a ranch in Chihuahua from a friend of mine, at 2,400 meter high, pretty high. He got snow every year on the pine forest. But with his management, he's growing grass under the forest. That's how we want to see our forests, with grasslands. Because in addition to that, preventing fires, because water is excellent repellent from fires. Have you been in a burn area where there's a creek? It doesn't burn. And what we're trying to do, as Colin mentioned, is to do a better effective rainfall. Has anyone heard that definition, effective rainfall? Effective rainfall is a term coined by Alan Severy, saying, don't tell me how much rain you get, tell me how much rain you keep. So if you are able to keep the moisture where it should supposed to be, then you automatically are going to have better plants, greener plants, extend the green season, and more diversity. And look what he's doing as well. He's killing the junipers because the junipers have no place on a healthy forest. And you know how many millions are spent in the US killing the mesquite, killing the juniper, killing the cholla cactus, killing the prickle pear? We're just working on not on the root cause, because I think Colin also mentioned we have to change the way we graze. Otherwise, whatever we do is just wasting our time, our tax dollars times. Yeah.
I'm only interrupted because we're running over on our lunch and there is
Oh, okay.
hot soup. So I reckon when it's good, maybe we'll find a good place to pause and then resume
Yes.
after lunch. Is that
Okay.
with
Yes.
you?
Perfect.
Yeah, because don't want, James made us a very lovely soup. So
A dusty soup.
We're starting it right now. So
Okay. Let's finish with this. So see how he's killing the juniper. People don't believe that we can kill or we can actually remove these invasive plants.
Why is it dying? It's suffocating it.
Why is it dying? Because those kind of like junipers, mesquites, and all those woody plants, the ones that I just saw there, you know, your thorny plants, they prefer compacted soils. And they like a quick drainage. But when you start keeping the moisture in the soil, then yeah, I mean, it's too much water for them. And then nature actually is going to give you exactly the time that you don't need this anymore. Then, but you used to have other woody plants, but they're going to take way longer than growing grass. So a friend of mine sent me this picture, and he was complaining about this picture because he's been working with a guy from Texas, and he said, you know, Alex, we've been covering the soil with grasses, good skinning the soil with armor, and they never saw bare ground, but he got all this snow. And then I was thinking about it, and I said, no, I think I know what's going on. So when you have skin in the soil like armor, the temperatures in the soil will be cooler in summer, but warming in winter. So he got more snow because you actually capture more snow with grasses. Probably you have seen that, Colin, in the northern US. Even with Gary Brown, they even just blowing, oh my God, he added a few inches or more snow capturing the grasses, but also it will melt much faster. So that's what happened there. Well, probably you have measured the temperatures are really extreme, bare ground versus where there's grass. Okay, no need to explain that, right? So I was in, where was that? In India, and then I approached a Germany delegation, and I said, hey, I want to give you a presentation of this, what we're doing. No, we don't want to do anything with cattle. Why? Because it takes this many liters to produce 1 kilo of beef. But I think what we're missing the point here, because we have to see everything holistically. So here, where we have bare ground, we're able only to infiltrate 2 inches of rain per hour. Where we've been working for a certain time, these are my daughter's boots. They need to work as well. So we're able to infiltrate 18 inches of rain per hour. So if we actually see the difference, and we extrapolate that to 30,000 acres, we could meet the water needs for 100,000 people for a full year. Well, a friend of mine took this picture at the precise moment, you know, like. But remember, one thing is effective rainfall. Like it's actually how you start fixing the water cycle. Have any of you are familiar with Walter Jenny? Walter Jenny? China? China? Walter China? That's why they never...
It's spelled Jenny, but it's pronounced Yana.
Okay, okay, thank you. That's why they never say, we don't know that guy. Well, he explains the big water cycle, small water cycle, you know, most of the rain is coming from the sea or the ocean, but the rest were supposed to actually create that rain. But if we have bare ground and no plants, no evapotranspiration, we're not gonna get that rain. And that's where we keep losing the rain every year because of so much bare ground. So the first thing that we need to actually try to fix is we have to infiltrate first the rainfall, right? And then instead of the water evaporating, it does evapotranspirate. And when it does evapotranspirate through a plant, it has like a living water because it has aerial bacteria, which will seed the clouds and it rain again. So the reality, folks, is that some ranchers in Chihuahua, we are experiencing at least 10% more rain than the neighbors. Obviously, the neighbors get, you know, the benefit sometimes, but sometimes it just go along the fence. It's really something that we don't have like the scientific evidence, but we're seeing that. So what else is helping us there? We call it the soil engineers. What do you think about this cow pie? Is it good? Is it bad? You like it? Good? Okay. Who else says it's not? You don't like it?
How old is it?
Exactly. I mean, it's still there. Remember, it's gray. We don't want gray stuff because it already oxidized, and instead of actually putting carbon in the soil, it releases the carbon into the air. So obviously the problem here is ivermectin. It doesn't matter what the guys tell us that it doesn't kill life, but it does kill life. So ranchers ask me, so how do you deal with not putting ivermectin or deworming your cattle? Well, selection and culling. This is how we want to see that. I mean, obviously, the better the water cycle, the more activity of dung beetles. Well, first of all, don't kill them, right? And then start fixing the water cycle, and you're going to have not only dung beetles, but also termites. Well, earthworms is very difficult on our dry areas, but maybe we don't need them. But the termites and then roly-polies, the little ones, yep, so and so on. Side view of the work of the dung beetles is pretty impressive, what they do. They put 2/3 of the manure into the soil. Well, that's what remaining of a cow pie. And then you're going to start seeing more diversity of dung beetles. The more progress you make, the bigger the dung beetles. This is like 4 times the size of the previous dung beetle. The gazella thing is the one, which actually, let me tell you, we need to thank Australians. Because Australians brought those beetles from Africa, and then the Americans brought that beetle from Australia, and then it went to Mexico as well. So termites, I see termites as or donkeys. We see termites on Jody's place last week. That was pretty cool. So termites actually take whatever was left by the dung beetles and then put it, the remainings in the soil. So you see this mesquite pretty weak. I mean, it's really weakened by the grasses. And then there's it's not a dung beetle, but another beetle start pruning the branches fall, and the termites take those branches and put it into the soil. And the termites have the largest number of nitrogen fixed bacteria of any other insect. So instead of you putting nitrogen through a legume, which is the mesquite, now nature decided that now the insects are going to do that work. And this is just observation, guys. I mean, nobody told us. We're curious to know what's going on here. If we were to spray this mesquite, we would lose all that thing. And then termites are also taking oxidized grass and putting it into the soil. But in order for you to have this, we have to actually have a better, more moisture, more humid environment. So we know also that what is good for the cows is for the wildlife. We have seen a lot of dramatic increase on all native species, mule deer, golden eagles, gray foxes, and these wild pigs, which it took us years to see them. And the bird guys also put this modus tracking station. So this station that they put in my ranch, I mean, there are multiple stations all across the US and other countries. I think there's this is in Australia as well. So any bird that actually has a device, it will track it. So it's really cool because now we know, like if you go to this site and then you look for our ranch, like Las Damas, then you're gonna see that we have the largest number of migratory birds endangered and listed. So it's really proving that what we're doing is not only good for the cows, but for the wildlife. And as I told you, right, most problems fall into nutrition and genetics. So what do we do with genetics, folks? When we go and open the gate, right, to the next move, then we look at the herd before, and we always pruning or culling the bottom. Because let me ask you this. It doesn't matter if you have donkeys or sheep or goats or cows, but who ended up, what are the animals on that herd that you're looking, that you ended up making the decisions? You're not looking at the best animals. You're not even looking at the average animals. You're looking at the animals struggling. And you say, oh, my sheep or my cows are in a poor body condition. Oh, let's open up more or feed them. Oh, my cows have ticks. Oh, let's treat them all. But in reality, if you have, let's say, 20% or less of your livestock struggling, it's not a nutrition problem. It's a genetic issue. And that's why we, at least every month, we cull, we trim the bottom, we get rid of those animals. Any animal that actually takes time is potentially going to leave the herd. We don't go and take an animal, feed him, and go back to the herd. No, we don't want to do that. It's just a one-time decision because everybody is on the same condition, all the herd. So why some cows are thriving and why some other cows are struggling, the same for sheep. And then when you make that decision often, so what we do with those animals, we sort them out of the herd, and then we put them in a lush, beautiful, well-rested pasture, no more densities, because now you're trying to get some pounds, and then we sell them. So try to keep your herd clean, meaning you have to play the predator, right? So yeah, we have predators, but it's not anymore the same thing. And in any population, let me explain you this here. In any population, you have like a bell curve, right? That's how you call it, bell curve. I know it's going to be difficult. So you have a bell curve where you have three groups: the average, the top, and the bottom. We keep calling these guys out. But in order to promote the genetics, if we have a cow that is looking good, it has a shiny, nice coat, let's say in spring or summer, and then it has a nice little bull calf that looks like a bull and behaves like a little bull, then we tag it with a different color because at the end of the branding, it's pretty messy. You ended up castrating the guys as you want the bulls. So, and then we put those genetics back. But if you need 10 bulls, then we ended up having probably 20 young bulls because we let nature decide. And I know ranchers, I'm not there yet, but we don't keep all bulls. I think for me that's a mistake. If you're keeping a bull, if you're investing all that time on improving your herd, why are you having a bull that is 5 years old or more? You're using an old model. You're supposed to get the next generation better and next generation better. And so we get these genetics, so we trim the bottom and we get the genetics back to the herd. Same for sheep, same for cattle, same for any goats, you know, because there's always this body condition. And body condition actually ties a lot back to pregnancy. Now, there are some ranchers, for example, one that I met in Colorado, that he only keeps bulls for 2 years old. But he keeps like triple the bulls. So that actually is going to help you for early maturing of your herd. Because only the bulls are early maturing are going to be the ones that are actually going to be working on the cows. What happened with an old bull? It doesn't work. It's just there, you know, just in between. Actually, I was in Western Australia and I was telling this, and a lady said, yeah, it's like these old guys. So, yeah, that's what we do. Pretty consistent, you know, every month. Keep calling, trying to keep the herd in a good pattern so we can make better decisions, folks. Well, we talked about that already. Livestock. So look at these two cows. Same herd, supposed to be Red Angus, but very different response to the environment. So most likely, this is going to go. If this is at the bottom with body condition or pretty tough, yeah, like rough hair coat or dinky calf or any problem, you got to go. And then you compare, you know, you're looking for more masculine bulls. As they ask Lasseter, are you familiar with the Beef Master in the US? Well, that was, crossbred was the idea of Tom Lasseter. So he really knew a lot about the cattle, and they asked Tom Lasseter, so Tom, tell us how a cow should look like a bull. He said, a bull should look like a bull and a cow like a cow. So, feminine, masculine, so look at these two bulls, same conditions. This is a closed herd of a friend of mine in Mexico that has been closed for 70 years. 1,200 cows. That rancher, who was the mentor of my mentor, that rancher went to buy 300 Hereford bulls from the US, and the first year he only ended up with 30. But he was a firm believer of selection. These are his bulls. And you know, I'm not talking about any specific breed. I mean, any breed is good. It's really what you do with the breed. Because remember, nobody is going to give you or sell you a bull exactly for what you need. It could be identical ranches, but your management is different. And this is the cows that the Spaniards brought, and they use it for rodeo in the US. And then cows eating cactus. I know some places in the US that they also eat we don't burn the thorns or the spines. They learn to break the pads, scratch in the soil, and then eat it. That's after dinner. And this is what we talk here, right? You go from here to here. And the summary, just to finish. So you probably can take a picture of these. So water, the water is the crucial element here. I mean, you're going to have as many livestock as the water can provide. And when we talk about water, we talk about water distribution, but also flow rate. Cows can wait to get their turn to drink water, but it doesn't work if it is a turn and you don't have that trough full. When you have problem with water, usually you have to look at the weakest link. And the weakest link on a multi-age cattle or sheep is the young ones. Because the cow will go and get a drink, but if your trough is going down, the calf will not be able to drink water, and it will leave when the dam leaves. So then you start seeing problems with the calves not being developed. Well, we have a lot of paddocks long rest periods. And then, see, this is what I was telling you, ongoing selection and culling. You define the percentage, the threshold. For example, I can tell you, I cull 24% of my herd based on body condition and herd code and any problems that I may have. It's like the 80-20 rule. 20% of the cow will give you 80% of the problems or consume 80% of your time. We keep up our heifers, guys, because why am I wasting my time if I'm going to be selling my heifers and buying new ones? See, one of the difficult parts of this business is how can I keep my business consistent? How can I create consistent genetics, and how can I create consistent, high-quality feed, which is obviously improving the quality of our grasses? And see your ranch as a lab. You know, this is the last thing, when we go to a ranch, people are expecting for you to tell them what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. It's great. I mean, nice talk, blah, blah, blah. What am I doing tomorrow? So what we have learned the hard way, because we also make a lot of mistakes, as anyone doing with these systems, is we ask the rancher to show us the best pasture, the best paddock. It also makes sense at the beginning, you know, because we as humans tend to actually, the same way that you tend to see these poor doing cows and make decisions with poor doing cows, we don't want to see ugly things. So we usually go and try to work on the worst area. But if you see this as a return on investment, while lowering your risk, you're going to choose the best spots of your ranch. It could be a riparian area, a meadow, something that you say still has biomass, diversity, and that's where you're going to put your efforts. And that's way, for example, do we still have time? Okay, sounds good. Let me erase this because I don't see any. So if we go to a ranch and then the guy, this is like a real example, the guy in Colorado, short prairie grass, tell me, oh yeah, I have a nice pasture. Okay, what is the name? Cadillac. Okay, Cadillac. So this is his Cadillac pasture. It has water here. I don't even want you to spend any water. Remember, we're seeing our ranch as a laboratory, right? So I want you to actually do this experiment in your own ranch. So if this guy is telling me that he traditionally takes 30 days to graze, let's say just, you know, let's say that it's just 90 acres. It could be whatever number you want. Now then I need to get in and out in 30 days. Because if I don't go in and out in 30 days, I'm changing the diet of the cows. I don't want to change the diet. I just want to change the density and the rest period. So we're going to split, it's a guesstimate, right? We're going to split this in 3, well, but just one, take 1/3. So that is, well, approximately 10 days. So the homework is, okay, you already have the water. So you're going to just do strip grazing, no back fence. They said these are 10. That's the homework. Do that homework, just check in the afternoon because daily moves. Imagine you're increasing dramatically the density. So go here, here, here for 10 days, and then the deal is you're going to protect these for a full year. Don't let any animal shoot the kangaroos. And then you create an alley here. So he's going to take 20 days here, and he's going to keep doing whatever he was doing in the rest of the ranch. This is what I want you to see in a year. If you're having more diversity and you're extending the green season or darker green grasses, then this is good to be enough for you to say, well, this works. And then you go from the best areas to the average, to the poor areas, more degraded, fodder, more expensive to develop, and so on. That is your homework. Okay. So this is now the ranch, how it looked like when it used to be all bare ground. So you can see that we are able to grow a lot of grass. I don't know if you know Ray Archuleta. He was working at the ranch. He takes care of my luggage. Do you don't know Ray? Well, you don't miss much, don't worry. He's hearing me probably. So here the point with this, what we have done, guys, this is my dad. He's 92 years old. When my mentor went to the ranch, he said, Alex, you're thinking of having more cows, having more grass, keeping more money in your pocket, but you haven't thought about something. Whatever you do is going to give you more years of life to your dad. And I think we were born to see beautiful things. Not fires, not droughts, not dust storms, not high temps. And if we do this, definitely we're creating a beautiful landscape. Thank you.
So as a starting point, obviously everybody's got what they've got right now in terms of infrastructure, in terms of livestock, and in terms of feed.
Yep.
Would you recommend waiting for a good season, or would you just jump in? Could you just box up a lot of your livestock into bigger mobs in several paddocks? Are you better off to just double up in half your paddocks and rotate back and forth that way?
Yeah.
That's a few questions.
But I reckon the best place to start is to do a grazing management course. I was asked that same question yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but what I did was, I just, when I started, is put the mobs together and started to rotate them. But I didn't do a course first, and I should have. That's why I said do the course first. So you've got a bit more information, a bit more to start with. Like, we've told you all enough today to make you dangerous to yourself. So, yeah, more learning, more education, and share information with each other as much as you can. Your mistakes and successes and all that. That's always really good. Yeah, you're not necessarily on your own. Yeah, so share information, successes and failures.
Yeah, I mean the same. We need to educate ourselves, because to begin with, we're trying to learn that language. I mean, we cannot speak in a different language if we are not educated. So we're trying to get into the same page, and then visit other farms, other ranches, stations, like today this station, but there's more than this station. So try to get awareness, educate, and then as also I recommend here, choose just one pasture, don't develop water, do your trial there you will not screw it up pretty bad if it's just 10 days, just for example, in your best pastures. It's always easier to start when there's something green, but that doesn't mean that you should wait, but yeah, educate yourself. Yep. And we know there's people that they go to YouTube University, There's so much information on the web, it's impressive. When you meet someone, they already know exactly who you are, what you said, and did I say that? Yeah. So yeah.
One thing that's interesting that I've found, and you just demonstrated it, when people start doing this, they get really passionate about it and love sharing ideas. Conventional agriculture, what tends to happen is everyone keeps their secrets to themselves. But with this, and I don't know why it happens, people get really passionate and excited about it and want to share things, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah. See, one of the key things that I think you may discuss this point, but that there's no any other state in any other country with more regen ranchers than the state of Chihuahua. So what was the key there? Actually, community. Community, working as a community, advancing community, like selfish, and then you make a lot of progress there. Mm-hmm.
Have you measured carbon, and are you interested in carbon
that? Where'd that go?
That if we have
I missed half
if
of
we
it.
have measured carbon and if we're interested on getting to the carbon.
Measuring carbon. Was the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your question again? Carbon.
If you were to start down this road, would you recommend getting some sort of carbon credit measuring?
Soil carbon measurements. I've been doing carbon testing at home now for quite a while, but more recent times I've baselined it and gone down that track. Now, in regard to carbon credits, you're better off to do the official testing, in other words, baselining, before you make any major changes, because you're paid on the amount of carbon you can increase on your property. Now, the only downside of that is that it costs a fair amount of money, especially on a big scale. So I'd be a bit careful. Like anything, look into it well. But if you're going to make changes, make them do the carbon testing almost before you start.
We baseline down.
Have you?
Oh, nice.
Good.
Great.
Yeah. No, that's good. Where'd that question? Oh, yeah.
2 years? 18 months, 2 years ago?
So, and when do you hope to revisit it? Haven't thought that.
And when you baselined it, how did that work? What does that look like?
I couldn't tell you too much about it. I haven't really looked at it. I haven't concentrated on it at all, to be honest. All I knew was I just wanted a starting point, because I didn't take enough photos when we first started out. I still don't have monitoring points, so that's something I really need to get onto. Yeah, I knew I made a mistake with not monitoring from the start, and I didn't want to do it with anything else.
So did you have some people come in and do testing for you?
Yeah,
and
the
was that in
Rangelands.
every paddock or?
They were pretty particular on their areas that they wouldn't do, mainly because a lot of this country's been cropped in the past. Arid lands actually set it up. I have funny, couldn't even tell you what it was, but they were funded. It was funded as well.
Our part of Farm Lab, Farm Lab's research project, like you didn't have any choice, they just come in and it was like random spots.
Pretty much.
We did that on our farm as well, so picky, but it's I suppose there's a difference. The baselining that they've had done, while it gives you a bit of an idea of what your carbon is, that's not of any use to you in terms of entering a carbon market. Yeah. When you do that, there's very specific, rigorous approach that you have to do, and you have to sign up first and then do it following their methods. This isn't useful for carbon credits, it's just useful to understanding
And James
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, James, throw down the bus.
No more questions. We can go to the pub.
Charlie and Simon.
Coming back to water, how have you found rotational grazing in places that have particularly harsh water potentially, especially for a lot of our northern producers that they're dealing with some pretty harsh water even in their better?
You mean harsh water?
Like high salinity or...
Oh, but you mean like coming out from a bore?
From a bore,
Yeah, well, out of our 8 wells that we have at the ranch, one has that kind of water. It's been getting better as years passes by. I'm not sure there's the vegetation cleaning because it's a kind of shallow well. Yeah, it's getting better, but they had to drink it. I mean, I would prefer to have really this great, nice, sweet water, but well doesn't give us only that. Yeah.
I haven't heard of any real problems with it. If the stock are drinking it okay now in a normal system, I don't think there's any difference in a grazing rotation, for want of a better word. Like I've never heard of any problems with it.
I suppose the difference you could imagine though is often when you move stock onto much different water to what they're used to.
Oh yes.
You're not necessarily going to have the time for them to adjust.
Adjust, correct.
Yeah.
We had one water that we didn't realise was actually as bad as what it was, and the sheep actually, the streams like the water, they actually got over a grid that we've never had sheep get over to go to another water. But once we got it tested, we were like, holy moly, this is actually like a lot worse than what we thought. And we stopped using that bore because of it. But we used to run our rams in there.
Oh.
Like the most.
Yep.
I just share a question on when you go down this path, how important it is to monitor the change from your so-called starting point, because we're so used to driving around and looking at our country and seeing what we can see out the window, and it's often you forget what it was like.
Yes, correct.
A couple of years ago. So we use satellite monitoring, and in the 4 years since we've started, we've changed our biomass from less than 250 kilograms to the hectare to over 12 to 1400 kilograms to the hectare in 4 years.
Yeah.
And we've only had pretty much an average one season. So last year we only had 7 inches for the year, and our biomass increased quite tremendously.
Really?
In 12 months. So I just want your thoughts on that importance of using things like satellite monitoring and to monitor your landscape.
Yep, I haven't used satellite monitoring, but we set up in the 90s, sort of when I first changed. We put transects, 100-metre transects, and I was measuring those along those regularly, at least twice a year, for quite a lot of years, and it was really valuable because I could see the change happening. I could see where I stuffed up. I actually moved them. I wanted to move a mob of sheep back to the yards for some reason. I won't talk about this too much, but I moved them back onto the country that they'd just grazed, and it showed up on the transect how that pasture or grassland declined because of that one mistake of taking them back on it that they've already grazed. So things like that you can learn a lot from. So don't take them backwards, keep them going forward.
I know the goal, is use your livestock to get everything functioning again properly. Do you see any scenarios where there should be a stopgap of reseeding or broadcasting some sort of seed just to get the process started, I guess?
Is there any advantage in that? There could be, especially if I mentioned there during my talk that if you had access to some sort of a harvesting, like a machine, harvest your own seed and put it into some areas that are quite bare or whatever, and I was not doing much, can be an advantage. But generally, when you get the grazing right, it will fix itself. But there'd be nothing wrong with doing that. It's a lot of times it's not necessary. But
yeah, I remember we used to do more open gates at the ranch, and one of these guys, we were looking at those tall grasses, and he started grabbing seeds and putting them in his pockets. And then I just, we tease like you do.
We might be able to let you know in a couple of years, Matty. We've got a grant through arid lands and working with Glenn with containment fencing a re-veg plot, and we're going to seed it down to native grasses and different herbage. So, obviously fence all rows and stuff out and give it the best chance we can.
Yeah.
And hopefully from there we can.
Yeah, because that guy that grabbed the seeds, he thought that, okay, I'm going to spread the seed and that's it, but you have to create the conditions.
Yes.
What about, do you know how you say you've got to keep moving forward? So you've got 8 paddocks and you put all your sheep in the first paddock and you get to the 8th paddock and it hasn't rained and your first paddock hasn't rejuvenated. What do you do then?
Great question. Sell the farm? No. Sorry. No. It is a good question because that's indicating a couple of things. You've either got you're trying to carry too many stock on your property, or you should be destocking before you get to that point. I mean, this is about drought management, really. And that one of the things that this type of management does is that because you're moving them through a series of paddocks or areas, and you can monitor it. You know what feeds ahead of you all the time, and so it creates time for you to drought plan, and if necessary, start selling animals. And what I did with that at home, I just learned to sell anything old or ugly when it starts getting too dry, and that's we had some serious droughts, a bit similar to this one over our way, 18, 19, and 20, the sort of 3 years there, and so that's how I made. We didn't sell everything, kept core breeders, but certainly reduced them down a lot. By well over half of our normal numbers.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely that's something you learn probably the hard way. And that's why we actually, in our context, there's a point where you have to make sure how much grass you have and how many stock you're running. Though for us, it's the fall. So in the fall, we make sure that we have grass for at least another year. Otherwise, you destock. But you're destocking at a time where all the animals are fat and nobody's selling, you know.
Yeah.
We might do one or two more questions, and because we are at our finished time, so if you need to pop out, then go ahead. But yeah, one or two more questions before we do a bit of an evaluation.
Just one other thing. Like in this pastoral country that we live in, you're not allowed to supplementary feeds. But in some areas, if you were in an area where you are allowed to supplementary feed, would you supplementary feed as well as doing this rotational grazing, or is supplementary feeding something you're trying to avoid?
No, I think you're always working for the majority of the cows, not the minority. That's what I was explaining here. The minority is those cows or those livestock that are not doing well. But if the majority is struggling, you have a supplement. I mean, we always put first the livestock and then building soil and grasses, because that's what's bringing money to the ranch. If you have to, you do it. But the idea is to actually start getting rid of all those inputs, because, for example, in the US, what is breaking the ranchers is not that they don't have enough cattle, it's that the cost of running a cow is pretty high. For many, many years, the cost of running a cow in the US, let's say 4 years ago, it was $1,000. And they were getting $700 for a steer. So what is the point of increasing the stock? They will be losing more money. Yeah. So it's how do you reduce your inputs? And going back again, you know, nutrition, you're improving, and also genetics. Because most ranchers have really high maintenance genetics, and that doesn't help.